Hello everyone, welcome to the East African Perspective. I'm with my co-host Musanjufu Benjamin Kavubu. How are you doing?
I'm fine, Thomas Lesaffre.
So tell me, what are we doing here?
We are going to talk about the East African viewpoint in a global sense, actually in the galactic sense.
In the galactic sense.
Yeah. We are going to try and project East Africa's posture to the world and make it as simple as possible to even people who don't have time for the news.
So the East African Perspective is where we look at the world and the continent from an East African standpoint, East African viewpoint. Yes. And what are we going to, who are you? Maybe you can introduce yourself.
So I'm basically Musanjufu Benjamin, as you introduced me. I'm a blogger. I have written a lot on East African geopolitics.
We're going to speak of security in East Africa, but before we speak of security in East Africa, I would like to ask you, what is making East Africa so special for you? Why is this region so special and different?
From a local sense or an international sense? Okay, I will take an international sense. It's a very important region, especially when you talk about things like refugees. Uganda itself is one of the biggest host of refugees in the world. We have about 1.6 million refugees in Uganda.
Many people around the world doesn't know that Uganda is actually hosting so many refugees. Yes. People see Africa as an immigration place where people try to emigrate. Yes. What they don't realize is most people from the conflict around us are coming to Uganda because they find some freedom.
14% of our world's refugees are in East Africa.
In East Africa right now. And those are also why the question of security is a big question for us. Because
very
conflict are many. Yeah. We have seen conflict in the east of Congo. Yeah. We've seen conflict now in Sudan and South Sudan.
Yeah. And there are conflicts with very many dynamics. Some are political, some are historical, but then there is also the environment. Especially with climate change happening.
Definitely. And if you want to say, let's say, which one are the main risk for East Africa right now? What do you think are the main risk for the regions, and what do you think how to mitigate that risk?
Debt is a very big risk. It is a risk for everybody in the global south. Then stability, which is security, and then the politics. Of the region, the dynamics.
The politics of the regions.
Of the region.
So maybe we should, which one do you would like to start with? I think you spoke about debt, and debt is a big question because the one that owns the money, he controls a lot, right? And money power is not the only power, but definitely it's a strong power. And us in Kampala, we remember watching Kenyans, right? In Nairobi especially, marching and marching and marching again.
Yes.
Almost for how many days did they march? 5 days, 6 days, something like this?
Almost a week.
It was a long time where even people here, the youth here in Kampala, were looking at it. And when we look at it, what we also observe is that question of debt resurrecting, right?
Yes.
It is quite clear that Kenyatta, son, has spent a lot of money during his mandate. And all of that money was debt money, especially towards China, towards the EU.
The
IMF. Different debtors, right? The IMF. But all this debt now ended up with Ruto, right? And Ruto is, as the continuity of the Kenyan state, is obliged to pay back that debt. But that debt realize how many percent of the budget of the country? Something like around 15 to 20% every year. You have to repay that before you can even invest in your country.
Yes.
Tell us,
so this is the thing.
Who owns that debt?
So this is the thing with the debt. Of course, the debt is owned by the citizens.
Yes.
Us, the normal people, own
the debts. Those that have to repay the debt will be citizens of East Africa.
Of course, nobody else. The citizens have to pay one or another. It could be through taxes or losing generations of a certain mineral. Revenue from a certain mineral. Correct. So it is the citizens. There are ways to mitigate debt. Of course, a country can't exist without debt.
Yes.
Debt is very important. It is what galvanizes the economy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we have seen developments.
Even America has debt.
That money has been used, and in the debt of East Africa in numbers is smaller to those countries, US or China.
The money has been used. The standard gauge in Kenya is the biggest infrastructure project for Kenya since independence. So, and it is facilitating trade. From the coast to the interior. It has contributed a lot to the supply chains. There were jobs during construction indirectly, and then there are more jobs being created. it is important to have a debt. How it is paid back should be the question. We could negotiate repayment terms, and I like the Chinese. They always give leeway to renegotiate.
But they're always renegotiating for Chinese, and for anyone give you loans is an advantage, because now it's going to
get more money, and they're going to get for a longer time.
So it might not be a good idea to just wait to renegotiate all the time.
But there is no other way around it. You have to pay your debt and then get moving. If you don't pay that debt, there will be other implications.
What I'm interested about is when we look at in comparison, right? In comparison, we have seen Kenyans saying that no, we do not want to reduce the state budget, right?
Yes.
They said that they should reduce the state budget on corruption, but they should not reduce the state budget on buying pads for women, on paying the teachers.
Now, that goes back to whoever is lending. If you are lending money to somebody, why don't you watch on how that person is going to spend the money? If part of the money is...
Oh, you can be sure they're doing this. No one is going to lend money to this region without looking at how much gold is here. How much gold is here?
Of course, they are the minerals. How we handle that can solve our debt problem.
Yes.
As a continent, actually.
Yes.
Or even the global south.
Yes.
We could boost our gold
But
reserves.
even before the global south and the continent, especially here.
East Africa.
Especially East Africa.
We can't boost our gold reserves. We can't have an East African currency. If we had it tomorrow, it would change the economies of all the 9 members of the East African community, and even our neighbors.
Okay.
To do that, to have that currency, we need gold reserves to back our currency. So we have to stop exporting our minerals, refine them here, develop
Benjamin,
capacity.
is that possible when we keep claiming that East Africa, the Emiratis, EAU, they are our friends, we welcome them. When the prince is coming, we welcome him.
We have to know their intentions.
No, the intentions
we have to be pragmatic about it.
The intentions are clear. If I give you money,
yes.
What is my intention?
Of course, you want something. Yes.
I want to make more money.
Yes.
All the time I come to invest, if I come to invest 1 million in Kampala, I want my millions back.
What use will it be for the Emiratis or the Chinese if I default and I have a failed state?
They take this gold. They size the gold.
When a state fails, can you take a gold really? Is it easy to take a gold?
Listen, they're building a airport in Karamoja right now.
Yeah,
Don't tell me this airport is for tourism.
Yes,
we haven't been to Karamoja for tourism.
But if Karamoja wasn't stable, can a plane land in Karamoja? If a region wasn't stable.
No, of course they need stability.
Yes.
Every business needs stability.
Now, if you need stability, first you have to make sure we have mechanisms to pay that debt. You have to make sure we have East Africa doesn't have a middle class.
Yes.
So you have to make sure our education works, our academia works, then we have a middle class, and then the middle class can spend.
Yes.
If the middle class can spend, the government has taxes.
But if the middle class is spending on Chinese product, the government is...
We can also work around that.
You have
as
to
a
work
region.
around that. But I think
we have to decide. We can produce whatever China is producing here, but at what cost? With the cloud of climate change.
Definitely.
Is it cheaper for us to produce here and then have climate change effects, or let China be the world factory and then we partner with them? It's about collaborations.
Definitely. I think we will speak about all of those things in other podcasts on economics. But when it comes to the risk that the debt brings, I think it's important we remind everyone that when there's a debt, there's someone that owns the debt.
Yes.
Okay?
So that's the citizens.
There is some people looking at East Africa right now, knowing that they have invested, I don't know, 20 million, 20 billions or 15 billions, I don't know how much, looking at getting that money back, right? Yes. So who owns the debt is the first question
the citizens
that everyone has to ask themselves.
The normal East African citizen.
What is the interest in buying East African debt? If I have an investment fund from New York or I have the pension fund of Finland people or any of those big big financial vehicles, what is the interest into buying East African debt versus buying ECOWAS debt, versus buying Senegalese debt, versus buying South African debt or Nigerian debt? Let me just ask all those questions. Who owns the debt? What is the interest in buying East African debt for those people? Who spend the money? That's another question we have touched a little bit. And who is going to pay back? You're answering who is going to pay back. That we know. That is for sure. What we don't know too much is why have they invested here at the first point?
I can't give you an answer. So there is a projection that the African economy may be one of the biggest economies in the world in the next 25 years. At the moment, the East African economy, GDPs, if we put them together, we have the fastest growing economy on the continent.
Definitely.
And then we have the African trade continental area coming. And it looks like the East African community and
so your
those
answer
around,
is whoever is investing into East Africa is interested into the development of East Africa.
Yeah, which is...
I find that really naive, Benjamin. Sorry to say.
It is something that is coming up.
We hope, but I think it's...
We have to hold on to that hope. If we don't have that hope, it's better we go back home and sleep.
We have to hold on to the hope.
Yeah.
What we know for sure is that this is the fastest growing region in Africa right now. Yeah. And in terms of GDP and transformation.
And by the way, it's growing with very many problems. Imagine
the problems, we're going to get to the problems. We're going to get to the problems for sure.
Yes.
The theme here is security, right?
Yes.
Security is what we need to grow. Yes. Security is what we need for better integrations here in East Africa. But security is also under threat because of politics and political house, right? Here in Kampala, we know really well of the who is the power breakers in the regions.
Yes.
We have a president that is listened in all those conflict zones. Yes. We have a president that is the eldest in the region.
Experience.
Because of experience, he have seen things, right? Yes. And if I ask you like to tell me, what do you think are the biggest risks in the politics right now of East Africa? What would you say?
Number one, we don't seem like we shall have continuity because we have a pretense of democracy, which was important, by the way. It just came to the African continent. It wasn't our model.
It was not, eh?
Yeah, we are just learning how to navigate it.
Definitely.
And that is a risk.
30 years of a funny love with democracy in the region.
We don't understand it.
Yes.
It is not our thing. We're used to chiefs and kings here and there.
And one-party states, which has also delivered a lot of development in the region.
Yeah. And we have seen one-party states work elsewhere. So how we navigate the leadership question sort of quantifies the risk politically. And if we can answer that, of course, that needs everyone, scholars, the politician, the military men, not the international community. Those ones can just observe. It has to be solved within the continent. As Kagame says, African problems to African solutions.
Kagame knows more of African problem than African solution, it seems like. But tell us, like, what do you think is the big threat in terms of like the politics right now? Because we're speaking from a region that seems to be enjailing every single opponent.
Again, because we don't understand. We as a region, we as a people, we don't have the fabric of democracy in us. Definitely. The system of governance.
Definitely.
That is why when somebody comes up and says, "Oh, Thomas, what you're doing is not right," I will say, no, don't disturb me. Stay away. I know what I'm doing.
But does it not present a risk to pretend that you're a democracy, like in Kenya, where the Kenyans believe they are living under democracy? They believe they choose their leadership, and the leadership is accountable to them.
Somebody has to.
You say you are in a democracy. You say you are in a democracy. But what you do is making sure that freedom of speech is limited, and your opponents, let me finish, and your opponents are not from the streets anymore, but they're in jail.
In jail.
In South Sudan, the leadership is in jail.
Yes.
In
Uganda,
the leadership is in jail. Yeah, in Tanzania, recently, the leadership came to jail. Yes. Even like East African opponents, such as Martha Karua, would try to go to Dar es Salaam to follow like the trial, and then she's sent back to Kenya. Now Besigye got arrested not in Uganda. He got arrested in Kenya.
It's an African,
right?
It's East African.
No, it's not African. It's East African for sure here. Yes. Riek Machar and his friends, his old friend Salva Kiir, have decided like to fight again.
They have never been friends.
In the heart. Is that not a big security threat for the region?
It is.
To tell the youth.
It is.
We are in a country that is 16 years old and 9 months.
Yes.
We tell the youth that we are in democracy, that they can choose. But in opposition to that, what we do is we create war against like
we have to be pragmatic about how we are going to handle leadership question. We could continue with this pretense, or we could go the Mao Zedong way. Yeah? Well, are we ready for
I don't understand. What's the second reference?
Mao Zedong, the Chinese.
Mao Zedong. We want to do Mao style.
Are we ready for the Western imported self?
I don't think is what the question is. What we're ready for the future is what we have now.
Yes. How do we solve now? What do you tell the youth? Somebody has to be very, very straightforward to the youth, and not the youth only. Whoever is around. How do we take the continent forward? Don't you admire the Gulf economies?
The Gulf economies?
Yeah,
no,
Qatar, UAE,
no,
Saudi Arabia.
No.
They are investing here.
No, I don't. No.
Very many of our people are going to work in those economies, which is not very nice.
Yes.
But they don't have democracy.
Yes.
The way we are thinking about it here.
No, definitely.
So,
but they don't pretend they have. As we do.
We have to stop pretending.
That's the question that I think we should ask. I think that's
we can't have other models and stop pretending.
That's other debate that are going to sparkling. But like, if we choose the way to pretend that the democratic system that you're right, established in the 1990s. Before that, like the region was under one-party state, and then suddenly, like we start to have this idea that are imposed by the IMF. That there should be election, there should be competition into politics, right? And behind this idea of competition into politics is to say what? Is to say that when you bring opposition within the same room, then you make sure that there's no rebel movement around. People's voice is heard. And if the voice is not heard, the danger is what? The danger is that they try to make sure that their voice is heard by destabilizing, right?
We go back to where we started from. If we are destabilized, those that are interested in the region will never get what they want. Even the crumbs they are stealing at the moment.
But is that not a good news? If they're interested into the gold,
yes, they won't get it.
If they're interested into raw minerals,
they won't get if we fall apart as a region. This region is very, very closer than people think.
But that's the thing. Some might argue that without democracy, the region is going to fall. Others will argue that with democracy, this region is going to fall. What we have observed all around the world is that democracy get weak with the strong,
maybe
and get strong with the weak. Democracy get weak with the strong, so the rich and the powerful, the Donald Trumps and the Elon Musk, the democracy is really weak with them. But democracy is really strong with the migrants that are trying to reach from Morocco to Spain or from Tunisia to Italy, right? So democracy has been so far like weak with the strong and strong with the weak.
So Thomas, the thing about democracy, it has to be rethought, like everything. Every system in the world gets old, and it is either put aside.
But hurts in East Africa.
Yes, we have to rethink how East Africa is governed. You know, the whole European Union concept, the blueprint was here. Because we had like the first economic integration group, Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. It is that model that was picked from here and taken to Europe, and it has relatively worked until they started this whole nonsense of militarization and arms race. But it had worked. If that concept was picked from here, why don't we pick up something else that the world will pick?
But I mean, you spoke of militarization. I think like we can bounce on that because I do believe that that's what a lot of leaders here believe. They believe that we have to militarize in order to develop.
Yes.
And that development only following markets and liberal democracy will not function.
Yes.
Right? So militarization come with development. And from the Ugandan perspective, we definitely have seen that happen. UPDF engineers are much more successful to develop roads than the Chinese counterpart that they bring.
It's not only in Uganda.
But in Uganda, from what we have seen, in Kampala,
military construction companies have been successful for years all over the world. The Panama Canal, the Suez Canal.
It's totally
it is new.
Yeah, it's totally new.
But we could try.
The Suez Canal is not built by the army.
Not the French army.
French engineers. No, it was French engineers.
Okay, but the Panama Canal. And the US military has done very many contracts in their country and also wherever they have gone to take democracy.
But that's the thing. We don't openly say that.
Yeah.
Maybe we might say it here because we have looked at the situation.
But
when
again,
East Africa presents itself,
yes.
it doesn't say that we are in a militarization.
But
of
again,
the
we can't.
economy.
We can't. Yes, it may work, but we can't praise it. Why? We don't even do military service in East Africa. No country does this military service. People go to the army willingly. So if you have only the military taking on those contracts, then you are going to again have another section of people being well off, and then another section of people not being well off, taking us back to the problem of we need a middle class. East Africa needs a middle class. One way East Africa can get a middle class is through the academia, empower research,
empower like the
education
world,
basically.
Yeah. Education.
Yeah, let the whole region specialize in education. Let our universities be the go-to.
Yeah.
Let people fly into the...
To be honest, we do have like better university than in a lot of
yes,
of
we do.
Places.
We do. We do, but we need to do better.
No, for sure. I think the question of the middle class is key because what does the theory say? The theory say that the middle class have two interests.
Yes.
The first interest is to pay tax because they want their country to be well off, so they can continue to grow within that space where they already are. They don't want to emigrate, right? Yes. The second point is that the middle class is always going to have a look at its taxes.
Yes.
The middle class pay taxes, and because they pay taxes, they want the politicians to follow what they've been asked to do.
Automatically.
Right? When in that theory, governments such as, I don't know, the South Sudanese government, right, which takes most of its revenue from oil and not from its own people, will not care about its people, will not care about its citizens, because what they really care for is the link where the money comes from, right? I do not believe in that theory at all. I do not believe in that
Thomas,
theory at all.
What would be the best part?
But I do believe that...
to project East Africa out there.
So if you look, once again, I think this podcast and this show is in order to make also navigation between what's happening in the world, what's happening in East Africa, and how those things compass. What we see is the rivers. What we see is that this project of middle class is a project that was there in the 90s, 80s, 90s, 2000, 2010.
And people say it was better then.
No, it was good. It was good. But what we really see is the economy is polarizing. With the algorithm economy, we are polarizing things. Yes. So the rich are becoming, the poor are becoming poorer, the rich are becoming richer. And when we speak of us being the fastest growing, economically talking, fastest growing region in Africa, what we don't say is that we also do not know how to use that growth to block poverty, to stop poverty. So yes, we might have a middle class that is going to send us some beautiful TikToks and a nice holiday trip in Mombasa or Zanzibar. And yes, the region needs that. We need to use that money. Yes. But what we really do by implementing those policies, those neoliberal policies, is the reverse. We are polarizing. The poor are not richer.
They are
the poor are not richer. And the rich, oh my God, the rich. Have you seen Kampala? Have you seen Nairobi? The rich of all East Africa are investing their money in Nairobi right now. Because the capacity to make money with capital is much higher than your capacity as a young East African to make money with your skill. Yes. And that's a big problem. And that
very
big
security threat. Of course it is a security threat.
Because the youth don't have capital.
They are left out.
Yeah, the youth don't have capital. They have skills. But only capital.
The richer or the establishment, because East Africa has an establishment, they could think of localized venture capitals. Invest in your youth. Yes. Why should East African youth go out of the continent to look for venture capital when the money is here? Okay. We have the ideas. We have ideas that can solve housing, can solve our health sector, can rework our whole supply chain, can connect the region. We haven't yet tapped even into the technology advancements of the world. We are far behind. Those that go and invest on stock exchanges and also keep money in safe havens can look at what the youth have and are proposing. The youth out here have ideas. But the skill in a capitalist economy do not bring wealth. What brings wealth I wanted at having capital. At some point I wanted to tell you that Africans before colonization were sort of socialists. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, now. Now,
now.
we have to blend capitalism with that to work.
But that's what Tanzania have done. They stopped.
Tanzania is somewhere.
You know, earlier we were asking.
Tanzania is somewhere.
We were asking earlier, what is what makes East Africa special?
Yes.
Why is it that we think East Africa is special? In all my classes, I've been a lecturer in South Africa in leadership schools. In all of my classes, we used to have that workshop where we opposed Kenya and Tanzania. We opposed Kenyatta and Julius Nyerere. We opposed Ujamaa with Arambi.
Okay.
With Arambi. And that has been like a big debate that this region managed to offer. Two similar conditions, two similar countries, two different political models, right? Now we're not in these situations anymore. More or less, everyone is following the same economic model. Everyone is saying we welcome foreign investors
because of globalization and.
No, but globalization was there before, but
not at the rate it is now, and how we are picking up ideas.
No,
from
what
all
I'm saying is that it's of course it's another era of history.
Yes.
But we are into a situation where we don't have diversity of governance. We don't really have diversity of economy.
Diversity of governance is another question. Maybe diversity of economy.
No, but as Nyerere and Kenyatta were opposite. They would go in meetings and then we know they're opposite.
Of course.
That cannot happen between Kagame and Museveni. That cannot happen between Kagame and
They
Ruto.
just don't project it. Can you compare Rwanda and Uganda? You can't. The outlook is different. The outlook will show you that these are different. These things are done differently. Yeah. So they are like them. It's just that they don't project it the way they used to project it back then. And at some point, I think the region went to war when Tanzania decided to attack Uganda.
Attack Uganda.
Yeah.
We have to get back to that episode with some specialists because some believe it's a liberation, my brother.
Okay, you would call it a liberation, but I don't know. I would bring very many examples.
But I guess those are part of the debate, East African debate.
Yeah, the East African debate.
Was it an intervention? Was it how do they call it nowadays? Peacekeeping mission.
Very many peacekeeping missions.
Peacekeeping missions. Yes. We have seen a lot of peacekeeping missions, but we haven't seen much peace.
There is a reason to that. Number one, Uganda is involved in peacekeeping missions.
Oh.
In Somalia. Rwanda sent its military in Mozambique. Kenya is in Somalia, and they have sent their police to Haiti. Of course, Haiti is part of Africa.
It is African for sure, yeah. You don't know who would be there.
But who are they serving? Are they serving the people? Are they serving East Africa? That now brings the East African perspective to the world.
Yes.
I would tell you that Uganda's presence in Somalia, Uganda stabilizing Somalia, Uganda, Burundi, Ethiopia, and Kenya, their work to stabilize Somalia is about a shipping route.
No, definitely.
Yeah, so, yes, peace, but whose peace?
Which peace is that?
Is it African peace? Who does Uganda operate? Do Ugandan businessmen operate a ship through the Red Sea? No, they don't.
They don't.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Yeah, they don't. If we did, we would have a military base in Djibouti maybe also.
But yet, that's...
So we are serving those peacekeeping missions that are in East Africa, that East African countries are taking part and are giving us that global feel.
I mean...
are not ours.
When we think of
they are for the world in essence.
When we think of how East Africa is placed
to
the world, it's a really interesting place. It's a really interesting place.
Very, very, very.
As you
geopolitically, geoeconomically.
All the trade between Asia and Europe, right?
Yes.
Pass through the sea.
Yes.
They're opening roads, but most of the majority pass through the sea.
Yes.
You pass through an African infrastructure that is not in East Africa.
They pass through the East African coast.
They pass through the Suez Canal, right?
Yes.
In order to join the Mediterranean with all the Indian Ocean, right?
Yes.
East Africa control that entrance.
Yes.
East Africa control that entrance. The same way the Houthis are currently controlling the Red Sea.
Yeah, the other side of the Red Sea.
But there is never a solid attempt to control those infrastructure. There's never a solid attempt to...
Are you saying a solid attempt by the East Africans or...
I'm saying that it is not part of something we discuss a lot. Like what do we do of those largest and long littoral from the Indian Ocean? Let me just add something to that, because why is it that we need to look at this? Because that position is really strategic and really key. No, East Africa.
East Africa, yes.
In the north, we have the Suez Canal.
Yes.
Right? In our east, we have the Indian Ocean, right?
The Indian Ocean, yes.
Correct. The Indian Ocean biggest coastline is from here,
yes.
right? The Suez Canal owns literally like all the trade between Europe and Asia as we speak, and we know that Asia is the main producer of goods for Europe, right? So we have the capacity for Europeans to consume in our ends, right? And to block this trade, right? If we block the trade, where would they pass? By Cape Town in South Africa. Yes, so there's no way they can avoid those flows.
Thomas, there is a reason.
No, let me. I want to put like a bit of a pieces of a puzzle, if you don't mind. In the north, we have the Suez Canal.
Yes.
On the east, we have the oceans and the Indian Ocean, right? That Indian Ocean...
That gateway to the Far East.
Has always bring East African politics, right? That Indian Ocean has never been neutral in the development of East Africa.
For centuries.
In East Africa, Swahili was developed. It's developed from Zanzibar to even Kisangani, right? You can speak Swahili all that side.
Yes.
What was happening at the same time in West Africa and the Atlantic Sea is a really hard slave trade that I believe gave birth to capitalism as we know it today.
Yes, of course,
right?
it did. Slave trade was...
Slave trade was originate capitalism, right? But here in the Indian Ocean, things were made differently. And if you look at how the world is balancing right now, we have this balance happening. People say, no, the US were the leading force. No, the leading force are moving towards Asia. China, India, both for the demographics, for the economic potential, and from what role they play in the global economy,
yes,
are key for the development. So do you think like this particular position of East Africa will help this side of the continent to almost separate, to do things differently and to go faster? Yes. Towards development, yes, than the rest of the continent?
I will give you two examples. The Belt and Road Initiative. The impact of a Belt and Road Initiative in East Africa is much greater than in West Africa and the rest of the African continent.
Yes.
So now that is one power putting that. There is a US military base in Kenya.
Okay.
That is influence from the other side of the world. Then these military bases in Djibouti, again East Africa, US, France, China, Japan.
Yeah.
Some people, even countries that don't have foreign military bases, have in East Africa.
Yeah. In
Djibouti, that is how important the region is.
Yes. Every big player try to come there to control and to have a say on this.
Now, that shows you how important the region is. We have a relatively working economic sort of bloc. It may be weak politically, but when it comes to the economic bit, it works. If I wanted to go to Tanzania today, I don't need a passport. I will just move and go. Even the ID may not be relevant. I will go cross, enter Congo, and now I can also go to Somalia. There is a reason why that is happening. The economy is working. The whole world is looking at the region. It is a base to safeguard that sea route, which is very integral into the world supply chain.
Very important for
and I hear,
especially on the world supply chain.
I hear it is one of the reasons why Russia wanted a part of Port Sudan. So that was going to bring another player into the region.
No, definitely. The Russians are really interested into the gold.
Everybody is interested
into the gold of East Africa.
The gold of East Africa. Not even the gold of East Africa. Now we are talking about rare earth that is used in batteries. For electric cars and coltan and everything.
Now, if we have to map all the minerals that the world needs from East Africa, we're not gonna finish.
So that is how important. That is how important the region is. But I will tell you something. You have heard of a free continental trade area.
Yes.
East Africa is very much into that.
Very much involved.
If you go study the free continental trade area, most of the research that is powering its policies was done in Germany, and it was funded by the European Union. Basically, it is a baby of the European Union. The European Union knows that at some point this economy has to feed into Europe. So they are building the blueprint of how we can attach to. At the same time, the East is mapping out the Belt and Road Initiative to also take a share of the continent. It is now up to us, the East Africans.
So what you're saying is that we are in a region that every world superpower is trying to have some sort of
the great power contestation in East Africa is very, very evident. China has the biggest peacekeeping mission, peacekeepers in the world, but most of them are in Sudan.
Okay.
Yeah.
China has peacekeepers in Sudan?
Yeah, they do. They do have about 1,500 troops in Sudan.
Okay.
That is how they are doing their bit of taking part of the region.
Okay.
America, I've told you, they have their bases. Is it called AFRICOM?
AFRICOM, yes,
yeah,
correct.
Very, very, very integral to the establishment of special forces in the region.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because AFRICOM is about less Americans dying on behalf of America, so they fund African armies, sections of African armies to do their bidding.
But now we have Kenyans soldiers in America, and
in
the
Haiti,
Americans are in Kenya.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It doesn't make sense.
I don't know how we can reconcile that.
Now that is.
But we should maybe just take a small break for our listeners with that song called Fela Kuti. We choose Fela Kuti, Water Get No Enemies, as the first song for this show, to show the power of unity, right? Water Get No Enemies is a song from Fela Kuti in the 70s, and Fela was trying to tell us a message that water get no enemies. So when waters stand together, it goes where it has to go. I think this is also what we want for the continent. This is what we want for this region, that he get no enemies, and then when he flows, it flows where he has to flow. Let's listen to this song, and we'll get back to speak of like the different crises now, step by step, that are arranging the region. Thank you.